Hey Raiders, Jacko here with another Raid Shadow Legends video. And today we're going to be continuing our beginner's tutorial series looking into the dungeons. And today we're going to go ahead and look at Ice Golem's Peak. So Ice Golem's Peak, in my opinion, is the second easiest, Dragon being the first. So why don't we dive in here and see what we have to look at. Now again, like dragons, you've got some stage markers, and they're going to be the same stage markers. So you're going to try your best to push up to stage 13 so you get access to those 5 and 6 star artifacts. And then 16 is your next push to get rid of the mystery shards and the brew drops. So those are your two big goals before you get, to stage 20 and confirm stage 20. Now, in the artifact sets for our Icy Golem here, the big ones I'm looking at when I'm going into Ice Golem are crit rate here, because getting your crit rate on your damage dealers up to 100% is a great increase in your overall damage. That's about it. I mean, life can be useful, defense can be useful. Is it reflex? Yes, reflex is actually another really good one. So reflex, 40% chance to reduce random skill cooldown. That can be really useful, especially if you've got a character that only has 2 abilities. They're A1 and 1 other, and then passives, because that means that 40% when it procs is always going to reduce the cooldown of that second ability. So it becomes more consistent for you. Taunting can be useful if you don't have anybody else that can Baroque, but it's a 30% chance. It's not consistent enough to make it a CC ability. If you stack it with other things, possibly, but all in all, we've also got retaliation, 35% chance to counterattack when hit. So those are your big ones. So on the low end, taunting and reflex. On the high end, crit rate and retaliation. Those are the sets you're going for. Now, something we didn't mention in Dragons is all the dungeons can drop ancient shards. It's a really nice source for ancient shards. You'll find that if you spend a month or whatever just farming dungeons, you're going to have way more ancient shards at the end of it than you would have if you had split things up or just been leveling people in campaign and that sort of stuff. The Ice Golem does have some mechanics we need to think about. So let's go ahead and hop into Ice Golem stage 13 here. If I can click and it will go. There we are. So in this setup, I'm actually going to change it around a little bit because I just did level Iron Brago up. He's a really good source of just overall survivability for the team. It's the same team I use for Dragons. That's because Coldheart is a master, and I've got a lot of defensive capability. I'm reducing attack, I'm increasing our defense twofold, and I'm healing. If this wasn't the case, if I had less support champions in this mix, I would not run this heavy single target damage dealer in Coldheart. I would scale it back a little bit, and that's because of one of the Ice Golem's passives. It makes it so that hitting him too hard is actually a bad thing. You're actually going for slower damage than you would in many of the other places, unless you've got a ton of support, like I do on this team. So again, to begin with, this is not something that is going to hold on Ice Golem 20, but to begin with, the waves are nothing special. Burn them down however you burn waves down. Again, if you can take Ice Golem in the end here, the waves should not actually be a problem for you. The problem comes in Terror Beast here. Terror Beast, at the higher ends, will go fast enough, generally, to put up reflect damage on this entire team, which has a really good chance of wiping your damage dealers out. So, if you find, as you're progressing, that Terror Beast is putting up that reflect damage, and it's killing your damage dealers, then you're going to want to look into some sort of CC to take the Terror Beast out of the equation. Getting past this second wave at the high end is going to be essentially a progression check for you. Can you build a team to deal with Terror Beast's reflect damage buff that he puts up on his guys? That's a question. At this stage though, so up to Ice Golem 13, that's not a worry. He doesn't put that up, we don't have to deal with it. So here's the Ice Golem. Big, meaty golem, giant Tetsubo of Doom with his 2 little frozen golem guards. As usual, almighty immunity, immune to stun, freeze, sleep, provoke, block cooldowns, fear, true fear, HP skills, HP balancing effects, cooling effects. Anyways, all the bosses have that. His second passive here is the big one. Attacks all enemies one time whenever Clysis's HP drops below 80, 60, 45, 30, and 15%. This attack will revive any dead allies up to 100%. This attack ignores 50% of each enemy's defense for each alive ally. This attack also has a 20% chance of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn. The chance of placing a freeze debuff increases by 40% for each alive ally. Since he revives his 2 allies, that's 100% defense ignored and an 80% chance of freeze. It's an ugly hit. Frigid Vengeance is the reason you're going to lose Ice Golem more often than not, because he does his regular attack, one of these 2 here, you get him below one of those thresholds, he immediately does a second attack, that's a big one, ignoring defense. That's gonna hurt. Numbing Chills, attacks all enemy, places a 50% decrease accuracy debuff for 2 turns, so-so, not too worried. Frost Nova, attacks all enemies. So, there are your basic skills. Now, some advice here is don't knock him down so fast that he gets a lot of those Frozen Vengeance, Frigid Vengeance attacks in a row. That is going to nuke your team. You won't have time to get your health and everything back up if you do too much damage. Weird to say, but you don't want to over damage Ice Golem. Additionally, if you have someone like Armiger, who can put a block revives buff on these little golems, that is a great way to reduce the effectiveness of Frigid Vengeance, as well as just make the fight go faster. If you notice, some of my people are hitting right there. Galek hit the little guy instead of placing that damage on the golem. So that's your basic golem. As you notice, he went right into that big attack, reviving his enemies because of the Heartseeker on Cold Heart. There you go. I mean, that is the Ice Golem for you. You need to be careful not to do too much damage for you to sustain on the Ice Golem. Play around with it, mix it. If you have a lot of support like I do, I mean, I'm running 2 major support characters in that. One of them doing a good amount of damage because it's Iron Brago. Yay! But just be careful. Ooh, attack boots. No, thank you. Just be careful about how much damage you're dealing and scale it back a little bit. Find other ways to deal with things, like take out one of your damage dealers, put in Armiger, and use his later rest to keep the adds down, the additional mobs he's got there. So that's your Ice Golem tutorial. Not much to it, except that you're going to want to be careful about over damaging the main boss. So let's go with something a little bit different here. We're going to go and take a look at Krisk the Ageless, if I can talk, for the aesthetics. Now, point 1, Krisk is a giant turtle. A lot of the things that would and wouldn't work for a human being are going to be different on a turtle. I mean, turtles have hard shells on their stomachs and such, so the fact that he's got this no real chest piece isn't going to be an issue because he's got a hard shell covering it. It looks like he's got shells all the way down his arm, shell pieces. That's going to offer him a lot of protection. So essentially, we're going to look at Krisk taking his natural defenses into account here. So he's got good foot protection and leg protection. He doesn't want to get hit from behind though, because there's none of the protection there. So he's going to get him stringed pretty easily, but the front of him is nicely covered. He's got a great thick kidney belt and everything, provided turtles have kidneys, and you could reach them around the shell. And I loved the helm trophies he's got on here. Just the helms of fallen enemies. Good chest protection, good arm protection. He goes one step forward in the protection of his head and gives himself this nice helmet with essentially a back gorget. Works pretty well for a turtle since he's got a lot of back neck exposed. That's really good. However, he doesn't have anything covering his front neck, so we can hope he turtles and ducks his head in when something like that is going to come. Massive shell, very resistant to pretty much anything, and huge spikes. If you've ever played LOL, he looks a little bit like the roly-poly dude. Anyways, Krisk, taking into the fact that he's a lizardman, aesthetically wise, effectiveness wise, we're going to go ahead and give his armor a 4 gourd. He'd be up there at a 5 gourd if he was protecting his neck and the back of his legs, as well as the back of his arms, or the inside of his arms, I guess is a better way of saying that. Weapons wise, he's got a nice, heavy, spiked, flanged mace. You don't see those two mixed very often. Usually a mace is either a round ball with spikes, aka spiked mace, or it's these intersecting metal pieces, aka a flanged mace. He's got a bit of both. He's got a flanged mace with spikes. That's going to honestly pop holes in helms with the spikes. It's going to dent any other hard armor and everything. And given such a big boy that he is, I have no worries that he can wield it effectively. Very pretty piece. It's got some scarring in there. Means it's been used a lot. Not a whole lot of decoration. Really anywhere. Krisk is not one for the fancier side of life. It's really about utility here. Even in these spikes, he's got a little bit of decoration, but he's not paying a whole lot of attention to that. So, on his weapon, I'm going to go ahead and give him another 4 gourd. Badassitude, it really depends on if the dude can run. If he's fast, then he's terrifying. I mean, utterly terrifying. You've got probably 5 or 6 times the weight of a normal human barreling down at you, screaming his little turtle scream, with all this extra copper armor weight and these spikes. I mean, if he falls on you, he's going to just mutilate you. It's going to be ugly. So, if he can run, his badassitude is through the roof. Easily a 5 gourd on badassitude. If he can't run, then you have absolutely no worry about him. You can just not be where he is. As he wanders over to a different part of the battlefield, you just nonchalantly move somewhere else. Pretty easy. So, in terms of badassitude, if he can run, 5 gourds. If he can't run, 1 gourd. So overall, we're going to assume that our Krisk here has surprising speed, 94, so not bad. He's not underspeeded, he's not overspeeded. We're going to go ahead and give Krisk here an overall 4 gourd. So there you have it, the second of the dungeon tutorials for our beginner tutorial series, Ice Golem. Again, I want to thank you very much for joining us on Jacko's Raider Rants. If you have any tips or tricks that you use for Ice Golem, please put them in the comments below. I would love to get a conversation going with all of you. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Have a great day.